welcome to Destiny Children's TV. We're so glad that you've joined us today.
Yes, we are. We are going to be starting a whole new series today, looking at a wonderful Bible character called Esther. In the next few weeks, you're going to learn loads about her and her story. But before we get to that, we are going to praise Jesus together, so up you get. You're going to need lots of space. I want to hear you singing really loudly and doing the actions really enthusiastically. Are you ready? Let's go.
Great is your faithfulness. Great is your faithfulness. You never change. You never fail, oh God. True are your promises. True are your promises. You never change. You never fail, oh God. So raise up holy hands to praise the Holy One who was and is to come. So we raise up holy hands to praise the Holy One who was and is to come. Wide is your love and grace. Wide is your love and grace. You never change. You never fail, oh God. So we raise up holy hands to praise the Holy One who was and is to come. So we raise up holy hands to praise the Holy One who was and is to come.
Are you ready, everybody? We're going to sing another song together. This one's called In Your Light.
In your light, I find my strength, and in your truth, I overcome, and in your praise, I lose myself. For in your love, you turn my tears of sadness into such joy and gladness. My heart can't keep it, and I'm shouting, shouting. You turn my tears of sadness into such joy and gladness. My heart can't keep it, and I'm shouting, shouting.
Come on, in your light.
And in your light, I find my strength, and in your truth, I overcome, and in your praise, I lose myself, and in your love, oh, you turn my tears of sadness into such joy and gladness. My heart can't keep it, and I'm shouting, shouting. You turn my praise your name, Lord. How we praise your name. Yes, we do.
Hey everybody, we're going to start our series on Esther this week. So if you want to go and grab your Bibles, you can follow along with us. You'll find Esther, she's in the Old Testament. If you open the Bible pretty much to the middle, you'll get to Psalms. Flip back a bit, you'll get to Job, and then you'll get to Esther. And we are going to introduce Esther, our character, this week.
Hang on, Pastor Steve. Esther's not in the very first part of the story.
Oh. Okay, we'll introduce Esther next week. So this week we are setting up the story. Let's go and find out what happens in chapter 1 of Esther.
And now, through the magic of a popsicle stick of puppetry, I bring you the story of Esther. So here was a Xerxes, ill-tempered, takes a bad advice, not the best king. He's having a big party with his friends and the leaders of his giant army. Whee! What a fun! He has a wife. He probably had a lot of wives, but there was one in particular named Vashti, Queen Vashti, who was very beautiful. Xerxes and his friends had been drinking a lot.
Ooh, too much coffee?
Something like that. So Xerxes said, "Hey Vashti, come out and show everyone how beautiful you are." Well, Vashti didn't feel like it, so she said something that no one ever said to Xerxes.
Would you hold my iguana?
That's not what she said. Where did that come from?
I figured that was something no one ever said to Xerxes.
Well, you're probably right, but that's not what she said. She said no. She wouldn't come out.
Oh dear. I can't imagine Xerxes like that. What with his temper.
No, he didn't. So he threw Queen Vashti out of the palace and said, "You are not my queen anymore. Goodbye."
So there you go. That was chapter 1 of Esther. So we haven't been introduced to Esther yet, but we have been introduced to some key characters. So there's King Xerxes. He's the big guy in charge, but he made a really foolish decision when he got angry. And that was to get rid of his queen, Vashti. He shouldn't have asked her to come out and parade herself in front of everybody else, and he shouldn't have gotten really mad at her. But he lost his temper and then was given some bad advice. Have you ever lost your temper? Have you ever got really angry about a thing? Have you ever made your anger lead you to break something? Perhaps say something that you don't mean to say? Perhaps to do things that you then regret later? It is really important that we have self-control, especially over our anger. If you remember, that was one of the fruits of the Spirit that we talked about. You have the ability to have control over your anger inside of you. You just need to take a breath, maybe count to 10, and then pray. And I bet when you've done those 3 steps, you won't feel quite as angry anymore, and certainly not as out of control. Proverbs 29 verse 11 says this: "A foolish person loses his temper, like King Xerxes did in our story, but a wise person controls his anger."
Today's Bible verse comes from Proverbs 29 verse 11. A foolish person loses his temper, just like King Xerxes in our story today. But a wise person controls his anger. You can be that wise person. Remember to ask God to help you control your temper. A foolish person loses his temper, but a wise person controls his anger. Proverbs 29:11.
If you tried to describe what God is like, it could be difficult or daunting. But when the people who wrote the Bible pondered the mystery of God, they consistently describe God's character in this way: compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, overflowing with loyal love and faithfulness. We're going to look at this third phrase, that God is slow to anger. Now, that might surprise some people. Isn't the God of the Bible mostly angry, striking people down for their sins? Well, it turns out that God's anger in the Bible is way more nuanced than that, and way more interesting. In Hebrew, the phrase slow to anger is pronounced erek apayim, or literally long of nose. But what does God's patience have to do with a long nose? Well, first, we need to look at the common biblical Hebrew way to say that someone is angry. Their nose burned hot. Like in the story of Joseph, when Potiphar thinks that Joseph tried to sleep with his wife, his nose burned hot. It's usually translated, his anger burned. It's describing how your body, especially your face, gets hot when you're filled with anger. And so in Hebrew, the main words for anger are either nose or heat or hot nose. This is why a patient person is called long of nose. It takes a long time for their nose to get hot. Like in the biblical proverb, a person's wisdom is their long nose. That is, their slow anger. Now, in the Bible, God gets angry numerous times, but God doesn't have a nose or get hot. These are metaphors, using our experience of hot anger to describe how God feels when he witnesses human evil. Just like you would get angry if you saw a child being bullied on the playground, so God gets angry when humans oppress each other and ruin his world. In the Bible, God's anger is an expression of his justice and his love for the world. But he's slow to anger, which means he gives people lots of time to change. Like in the story of the Exodus, when Pharaoh enslaves the Israelites and has their baby boys thrown into the waters. God sends Moses to confront Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's given 10 chances to let Israel go free. But after the 10th refusal, Pharaoh rides out with his chariots to destroy the Israelites, and so God destroys him in the waters. Pharaoh's own evil is turned back upon him, and we read that this is an act of God's hot anger. Now, that's really intense, but think about it. God wouldn't be good if he didn't get angry at Pharaoh's evil and eventually do something about it. And notice that God's anger is expressed by handing Pharaoh over to the consequences of his own decisions. And this is actually how God's anger is shown throughout the scriptures, like in the story of the Israelites. Over and over again, for hundreds of years, they betray the God who rescued them from slavery. And though he gives them many chances to turn around, they keep giving their allegiance to the gods of other nations. And each time we read that the hot anger of God burned against the Israelites. But notice what always follows. God gave them over into the hands of their enemies. Israel wanted to serve the gods of other nations, and so God, in his just anger, gives them what they want, as those nations circle back and defeat Israel. This is similar to what the Apostle Paul says in his letter to the Romans. He says God's anger is being revealed against human evil, and then 3 times he says what that looks like. God hands people over to their destructive desires and decisions, even if it leads to death. But Paul also says God is patient, giving people time to come to their senses and change. Because remember, God's anger is a response to human evil, and it's based on a deeper character trait, his compassion and his loyal love. God is not content to let people sit in their own self-destruction. In the Bible, God's on a mission to rescue. This is why Jesus said that he was going to Jerusalem to die, as a demonstration of God's love for his enemies. He would stand in the place of his people who were choosing self-destruction and take the consequences of their decisions upon himself. In Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, we see God's anger at evil and his love for people working together to provide forgiveness and life for a humanity lost in self-ruin. So God's anger in the Bible is really important, but it's not the end of the story. When God is angry and brings justice, it's because he's good. And he's extremely patient, working out his plan to restore people to his love. And that's what it means to say that God is slow to anger.
Oh, hello everybody. How are you today? Oh, good. Have you all had a good week? Oh, I'm glad. I hope you have been enjoying Destiny Children's TV. What in the world was that noise? Grandma, was that you?
Yes!
Well, what was that? Grandma, that's a horrible noise.
Well, I'm sorry, but Pastor Stevie told me to do it.
What? He told you to make all that noise while we are trying to do Destiny Children's TV?
Yes, he did.
Oh, hang on a minute, boys and girls. I think I know what's happened. Grandma has got the wrong end of the stick. Now today, we have been talking about anger, and Pastor Steve says that anger is like a balloon. The more you store it up, the worse it gets, and what we need to do is let it out in a positive way. We have 3 things that we need to do when we are angry. Are you ready? I think this is really good. Number 1 is we need to take a breath and breathe in and out, nice and slow. And number 2 is count to 10. Shall we do it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And number 3 is pray. Because you know God wants to hear from you. The best thing we can do is tell God about it. Tell him what we're angry about. Isn't that great? I think that is what Pastor Steve was talking about, Grandma.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure. Look, this balloon matches me. You know, I don't really want to give this balloon to Elsa.
Oh, why not?
Because she would let it go. Did you know once, Grandma, that I met a sailor that put a helium balloon in his ship?
Oh, why?
Well, I don't know. But whatever floats your boat, I guess. Hey!
Oh, Dusty.
I think we should say goodbye now. We've been here too long.
Yes, but I've got one more balloon to do now.
No, Grandma, don't do it.
Thank you very much for joining us today on YouTube. It has been wonderful learning all about chapter 1 of Esther. More next week.
Yes, we're looking forward to learning more, but for now, have a brilliant week, everybody. Remember, you can ask God to help you control your temper. Have a brilliant week, and we'll see you real soon. Bye.
In your praise, oh, how we praise your name, Lord.